It's March 19, 2022. You spent your Saturday evening playing Tunic, a new action-adventure game that you don't know a lot about. But it's a top-down action game and thus don't come often. Plus, it reminds you a lot of A Link to the Past. You've been staring at those pillars in Tunic all evening. Do they even do anything? You open the manual to find your next objective before a picture on one of its pages gives you an idea. You keep the A button pressed for a few seconds and the pillar raises. Though you don't know the name of this action, the answer was to pray. Something you could always do, but didn't know how. In another game called Animal Well, you try to make a jump that's a little too wide or too tall for you, even with your trusty bubble wand. The bubble wand creates a single soap bubble that normally flies up, but falls down slowly if you stand on it. Make another bubble and the first disappears. With a little precision, you can use this item to jump to longer distances, but this time, one bubble isn't enough. A little frustrated, you start mashing the jump and use item buttons, and that's when you see it. You can make a new bubble just as you jump from the previous one. You can jump from bubble to bubble. This technique takes a little getting used to, and it does have its limitations, but it's almost like learning to fly. Turns out the bubble wand could always do that, you just had to figure out how. What do those examples have in common? They all show the player progressing through the game, something that is hardly unique to Tunic and Animal Well. They both result in unlocking new areas or items. That's what you would expect from Metroidvanias, a genre that those games are part of, even if calling Tunic a Metroidvania might be a bit of a stretch. But there's something far more unique about those examples. Something that is hard to explain in video because what matters can't be seen by eye or captured by footage, nor is it made clear by a factual retelling of the events. Chances are you've read the title of this video. All those games are about moving through the environment, not with items, powers, keys, but knowledge. Many think this is the start of a new genre. As expressed in the video, the best genre still has no name, by Team Sensei. I've seen it referred to as knowledge-based progression, but I'm not going to use that name. I'll explain why later. For now, we'll call this new genre MetroidBrania. It's a terrible name, I know, but it's the only other name I've seen people use, so that's what we're going with. Part 1. What makes Metroidbranias so special? Are Metroidbranias really so different from item-based Metroidvanias? After all, knowledge and items aren't always so different. Have you ever written down a password on a notepad before forgetting the password and losing track of the notepad? If, a few days later, you were to find the notepad or remember the password, you would accomplish the same goal. In cases like this, items and knowledge are interchangeable. Switching out every key in your game with a code doesn't make a new genre on its own, and it's not even a requirement to fit into Metroidbranias. After all, most games in the genre still use items. What matters is how you find those items and how you acquire knowledge. Is it given to you, or do you have to find it? Is there a mystery behind those items? In Metroidbranias, you don't find information like you would normally find items. The point isn't that progressing through the game requires knowledge instead of items, though it usually does. The point is that knowledge is secret, and you must fight to uncover it. It just so happens that items, on their own, can't carry a whole game worth of secrets. A classic Metroidvania would reward you progress with an ability that opens up new areas to explore. Something like a powerful punch that can destroy crumbling walls and reveal what's behind them. A Metroidbrania, on the other hand, gives you a character with most of its abilities already unlocked. It just won't tell you about them. Figuring out how to use those powers, figuring out that you even have those powers, will take you most of the game. My favorite examples of this are the manual and the Holy Cross from Tunic. Tunic is an action-adventure game with a colorful presentation and lots of secrets, including some that betray its family-friendly theme. It reminds me a lot of A Link to the Past, with its green tunic-wearing protagonist, cross shield, and hidden items. Even the manual looks like the one from A Link to the Past. Tunic relies on its manual a lot, but not in the way you might expect. For one, this isn't a physical manual. It's not even a PDF that comes with the game. It's only accessible in-game, and when you first open it, you find it's missing a lot of pages. But don't worry, you'll unlock more and more of the manual while going through the game. Some pages are impossible to miss, while others are hidden, but none are strictly necessary to finish the game if you know where to go and what to do. But you won't know where to go and what to do if you don't read the manual. Is this a Metroidbrania? I think so, but I can see how someone could disagree. After all, the manual is an item, and you do need the manual on your first playthrough. The truth, as we'll discuss later, is often in the middle, but not in this case. Tunic's manual is as knowledge-based as it gets, because finding a manual page and reading through it isn't enough to move forward, because you can't read the manual, because, with a few exceptions, every word in the manual is in a different language, a language that only exists in the game. For example, the Holy Cross. Spoilers for Tunic's fourth best kept secret. How do you figure out how to use the Holy Cross? Before you even do that, how do you get the Holy Cross? What even is it? You know it's a tool, a game item, like the magic wand and the ice shard, but you don't have a clear picture of what it is, and I mean literally. The image on the manual is out of focus. Eventually, you'll have found every item in the game except for the Holy Cross, and every time you scroll through the manual you see those words. It's as if this Holy Cross was taunting you. So you're left wondering, does it even exist? Is it just a lore item? Or maybe you just missed it. It's possible to miss items in Tunic, even if it's rare. And then you find page 44. Look at this picture. Can you guess what the Holy Cross is? How you use it? Did you figure out that the Holy Cross was always with you? Let's look at page 43 and 44 together. How about now? The Holy Cross is the D-pad, or the arrows on your keyboard if you're not using a controller. You can press the D-pad to input sequences made of the 4 cardinal directions: up, down, left, right. One example visible on pages 43 and 44 is to follow the path drawn on the stone doors: down, right, up, right. But once you learn about the Holy Cross, you can't stop finding paths in the environment, the textures, the manual, and the worst part is that the game wants you to find paths. The golden path, mirrored and flipped, translate the language, translate the other language. I was in the Tunic Discord server when the ARG was being solved, and some players were legitimately becoming obsessed with it. By the way, aren't Metroidbranias basically ARGs? Part 2. Are Metroidbranias basically ARGs? No, they're completely different things. That's the short answer. The long answer is still no, but there are some overlaps between knowledge-based progression and ARGs. Lots of Metroidbranias contain ARGs, and even the ones that don't get so complicated that we might as well call them ARGs, but one thing at a time. First of all, what is an ARG? ARG stands for Alternate Reality Game, meaning the game takes place, in some way or another, in an alternate version of our world. An ARG will have you look things up online, search for coordinates on Google Maps, and go to physical locations with your real human body. There you will hopefully find the clues necessary to solve the ARG's fictional mystery that takes place in the real world. Hence, alternate reality games. A puzzle that takes place entirely inside of a game is not an alternate reality game. It's just fiction. It doesn't mix with reality. That said, this rule it's how ARGs are traditionally classified, but it's not perfect. For example, the Inscription ARG, a clear-cut example of an ARG, is made of steps that take place inside of the game. Those aren't less ARG-like than the ones that ask you to alter the game files or go to a physical location. They are all part of the same ARG. Another definition, while not inscribed in the name like alternate reality, is based on what ARGs are like to play. ARGs are community games. You're not going to solve an ARG by yourself, and even if you did, that's not really the point. ARGs take a dedicated community at least a few days to solve. They require different skill sets, lots of careful eyes, constant communication, and sometimes different setups. One of the Inscription ARG puzzles requires you to play the game with horizontal letterboxes and record your footage, just so you can catch the secret message that appears for a single frame before you crash the game. Part of the Animal Well ARG requires at least 50 people to collaborate, and it's statistically likely to take way more than 50 because each copy of the game is equipped with one of 50 possible codes, which must all be combined to create a message. MetroidBranias aren't group activities, so they aren't ARGs, but they are ARG-like. They won't ask you to find clues outside of the game or to collaborate with a community, the two strong requirements of the ARGs, but otherwise they share a lot of the same themes. Both genres are full of puzzles, for one. They are cryptic about their story, their characters, and your own means of interaction with the game, and they use this mystery to create atmosphere, a creepy atmosphere usually. This matters because genre is not only about what you do, or the medium you do it in. ARGs and Metroidbranias tell the same kind of stories, the story of a plucky video game hero in a world full of secrets, as well as the story of a puzzle cracker, a hacker, and a conspiracy theorist, all roles that the player has to play for themselves. A good chunk of a good Metroidbrania takes place outside of the game itself, not just inside your brain, but in your house, as post-it notes take over your desk, and in your life, as you spend every waking moment thinking about the game. Metroidbranias, just like ARGs, are about playing the game in ways that are unconventional but intended. Both genres love to present a challenge that seems impossible with your current moveset or list of items, only to hide the solution in some secretly interactable part of the environment, in the option menu, or in an unrelated item. Part 3. Okay, but is this really enough to make a new genre? This ARG-adjacent obsession with mysteries might seem like a departure from our starting genre, Metroidvanias, but is it really? Every Metroidvania wants you to guess what your next power will be, what kind of abyss, locked door, or small opening in the ground you'll be able to traverse thanks to your new powers. In Metroid and Super Metroid, your special weapons are color-coded to the doors they unlock. This lets you guess that an inaccessible red door can be opened with the red super missile, or with a few regular missiles, but let's keep it simple. You only need to find the right power-up and remember to come back here later. That right there is classic Metroidvania, which is to be expected from the series that named the genre. If you were to see that obstacle and guess correctly that you can move past it using an item that you already have in a way that the game has not told you about, then we'll be talking about a Metroidbrania. Just like you do in Metroid and Super Metroid. Sorry, I lied. None of this is new. Samus' blue rocket will open a blue door and it will take care of some enemies better than other weapons, but it can also freeze smaller enemies in place. If you're fast enough, you can freeze a group of flying enemies and jump from one to the other as if there were steps on a ladder. Based on our definition, this should only happen in a Metroidbrania, and yet it's in Metroid from 1986, which is supposed to be the first Metroidvania. As we said at the start of the video, the point of Metroidbranias is not that knowledge gates progression, but how you find that knowledge. And how do you know that frozen enemies can be used as platforms? You have to figure it out by yourself. Blue missiles are weapons, and you do spend the whole game shooting enemies with them. Hit one with a blue missile when you're in a small corridor and you're guaranteed to bump into them and notice that you didn't take any damage. You might even realize that you can safely jump on them and then onto something else from there. You start thinking about jumping from frozen enemy to frozen enemy, and then you find this room full of flying aliens ready to become your stepladder. You deduce, based on your knowledge of how this tool works as a weapon, that it can be used to overcome some navigational challenges as well. So, there it is. Metroid invented MetroidBranias along with regular Metroidvanias. But did it really? I'm a contrarian and I like making short videos. I would love nothing more than to close this video by saying, you're all wrong, Metroid invented knowledge-based progression in 1986. The best genre does have a name, and it's Metroidvania. There is nothing new under the sun. But that doesn't feel correct, does it? Why did the 30 years old idea wait until 2014 to spawn a new genre? Why do we feel like we needed a new name for this alleged new genre? And why doesn't Metroid feel like a Metroidbrania? Those are all valid questions, and they arise from the same issue. A genre isn't just one idea. It's a gameplay style, it's a type of story, a set of themes, and more. Fez, Tunic, Animal Well are all mysterious. They have little to no dialogue, at least in a language that the player understands. And then there's something that Metroid, the 1986 NES classic Metroid, couldn't have. All those games are a response, a twist, a subversion of older games and even entire genres, usually Metroidvanias, sometimes puzzle games and platformers. Fez looks like a Super Nintendo game with a twist, but it actually has 1 million twists. It starts from the obvious, the rotating camera that unlocks new platforming options. Then it's the alien language, which you need to translate to finish the game. Then it's first-person view, then it's QR codes, and then puzzles that are way more complex than anything before it. Fez is not novel because it spawned a wholly new genre, or because it did something that had never been done before. It did neither of those things. Fez is novel because it builds on things that came before it, in ways that couldn't have been done before it. Metroidbrania, at least now that the genre is relatively new, frames knowledge-based progression not as the defining characteristic of the genre, but as a twist on the established formula. Metroidvanias, but knowledge supervenes items. The keyword there is but. This is why I don't like knowledge-based progression as a name. It puts the focus squarely on the mechanical twist, which, while important, isn't what defines the genre. Metroidbrania, as pretentious as it might sound, avoids this issue while focusing on the mystery and the intuition that are core to the genre. It's even a twist on the name Metroidvania, just like the games are a twist on the genre. Part 4. Conclusions. We always focus on what's new, which makes sense when you're selling a story about the best genre that still has no name. I should stress that there's nothing wrong with that. It's just framing, a completely normal, arguably inevitable aspect of writing. But if we only focus on what's new, we ignore everything that isn't. And how can we declare the invention of a new genre if we haven't looked at its past? In its past, we find Samus freezing missiles and her secret wall jumping technique. A Link to the Past unmarked side quest and its unsanctioned sequence-breaking runs. The hopelessly black backgrounds of Metroid, courtesy of the NES limited color palette, so in tune with the aesthetics of the genre it spawned. I don't want to undermine the strengths of Tunic and Animal Well, quite the opposite. Not only because lots of work went into making those games, or because they're great games overall, but because they managed to make a genre, Metroidvanias, feel new and exciting again. For how many incredible titles Metroidvanias spawned lately, they did grow a little stale. I think it's safe to say that we have a lot of new terrain to explore now, thanks to Metroidbranias. The fact that knowledge-based progression wasn't invented, wasn't created, but rediscovered from the origins of the genre, doesn't make it any less impressive or important. We didn't invent electricity, we discovered it and took some time learning how to apply it efficiently, but I still like having computers and video games and light bulbs. If you never played a Metroidbrania before, I wholeheartedly recommend the two games I've mentioned during the video, Tunic and Animal Well. If you like puzzles, if you like to see games break new ground, or if you're just a fan of regular Metroidvanias, you owe it to yourself to play one of them. Tunic is definitely more friendly, but Animal Well looks like it will be the blueprint for Metroidbranias to come, and I can't wait to see what they will be.